Hi, ajmahari here. Are you still in a BPD relationship, recycling it, on, off, up, down? Maybe nobody moves out, maybe living together, maybe just dating, maybe you got married, now you got kids. And this thing is just going like a roller coaster all over the place. Like, it's just not working out, and it hasn't been working out for most of the time, and the good that was so good is really not that good anymore because you hardly ever get any of it. And boy, the devaluation and the bad is horrible and predominantly your experience now. Because after people relationship recycle a few times, that's where it devolves to. It's not going to like evolve, change and grow this relationship of impossibility with that borderline you're with, likely untreated or had maybe some therapy, but nothing that really matters because they're not changing and they're not growing and they're not finding themselves and they're not getting to the healing work that people with BPD can really do when they seek it out, when they want to do it in therapy. It's a comment that was on the channel about 2 months ago and popped up, and I noticed it this time. Guess I didn't see it really the first time because somebody replied to it, and then maybe I'll include the reply. But the comment was on the video I did, some years ago now. BPD, how do borderlines think and lack of logic. Commenter says, I hate saying this, but my ex was so effed up. She'd start a fight with me, yelling and insulting me until I snap and do it back then, say how mean I am, remind me over and over again. She lied nonstop, but called me a liar all the time. In 5 years we dated, there wasn't a single peaceful week. So that can vary for people. No matter what I did or didn't do. And because I lack, this is a commenter, because I lack self-worth and am pathetic, I still see her and do loving, thoughtful things for her, which she maybe appreciates for an hour, then has no problem starting a fight and disrespecting me. I obviously need help, says a commenter, because no sane person would put up with the abuse that I put up with. First thing that jumps out at me there is this person, obviously with codependency, maybe some other kind of wounds from childhood, is in a martyr-victim repetition compulsion cycle and probably not consciously aware of that. So really feel for the commenter because they know, right? You often know a little bit more up here than you can muster your emotions to kind of join with, right? That's the cognitive dissonance that isn't only what people experience when these relationships, when you're ghosted or discarded or there's a breakup or in the recycles, but people experience, think about it. People don't say this enough, I don't think. I don't know if I've ever said it this way. People don't experience, or people experience also, just in the relationship of impossibility with untreated people with BPD or unless until change, treated to the point of change and being at least somewhat healthier. The martyr victim in a codependent, which, yes, that will have its roots in childhood too. Something in your family of origin, something experienced in childhood where you ended up with that sort of role. Okay, so adaptation into a martyr victim type role. And when I say this, by the way, I'm not saying martyr or victim with any pejorative intent or anything about that. It's a really painful place to be when you're hurt. The cognitive dissonance isn't just experienced after breakups. You're having cognitive dissonance all the time in the relationship. Have you ever thought about that? What's really going on here? Your heart is like, I really care about this person, so I'm going to suggest they try this, try that, try the other thing I'm trying to fix, rescue them, get them to therapy. I just need them. I love them so much, but I need them to change because this borderline isn't who I thought they were or who they wanted me to believe they were or whatever your take is on that. Bottom line is you're in love with somebody's potential. And will they ever come to the fruition of that potential? You're not going to get them there. You're not going to make them do it. You can't control if they'll go to therapy or not for multiple years, 5, 8, 10, 16 years. It depends on the severity of BPD, depends on the modality, depends if they're engaging treatment or not. you're experiencing cognitive dissonance throughout the entire relationship. That's why it's especially painful after, because you've accrued it all and now you're still re-experiencing it. Because this person, in what sounds like an incredible amount of pain, and they're aware up here. No sane person would put up with what I'm putting up with. And even though she does all this to me, it's horrible. It hurts me so bad. I think we can take out of that comment. But I still do loving, thoughtful things for her. Because maybe she does, like the commenter said, maybe she'll appreciate for an hour. Well, maybe people, if you can relate to the commenter, wherever you are with this, maybe the commenter is at a place where if they got 5 minutes worth of appreciation, they would still find it worth doing. It's not really worth doing, but you know what I mean? They'd still keep repeating codependent repetition cycle of why that's happening. So I don't know what your experience is. Can you relate to this? But this is an example of cognitive dissonance in the relationship or in the recycling of the relationship. Always expecting that after every rupture, whether that means they ghost, go away, whatever, could just mean they rage or give you the silent, I don't mean just rage. They rage or give you the silent treatment. They hurt you in so many ways. And even while that's happening to you, you're experiencing cognitive dissonance if you go back and think about it. Because most people don't talk about it that way when they were in the relationship. But the cognitive dissonance ongoing in the relationship is 1 minute things are fine. And the next minute there's a total opposite of fine. And you're really getting yelled at, screamed at, or they won't talk to you at all. And the cognitive dissonance that's in play there actively throughout these relationships is, this feels bad. This is awful, like feeling it or knowing in your head, well, what am I staying with this for? Why am I still trying to love them? Why am I doing, but then your heart will kick in and be like, well, but I love them, which even in codependency can mean sometimes, and I need them. And even in codependency can sometimes mean unconsciously, and this is just like what happened with my mother or my father, and I'm going to get what I want this time. I'm going to make it happen. I'm going to change it. And that's the externalizing out in codependency of, well, I just got to fix, rescue, change the borderline. They just got to get it. You might not have had a borderline or narcissistic parent. You might have. But many people who don't, or they don't realize that they do have a parent with BPD or NPD. Even in that, it can just be that you didn't get your needs met. Or again, as I've been saying, you didn't feel seen or heard. Maybe you were seen or heard in a way, but not enough. Wait a minute. My dad really wasn't available emotionally for me. But my dad, just examples of clients mixed together, right? I've heard this a lot. But my dad, he was a good guy. He was a good man. He was there for me, just wasn't emotionally available. He watched a little bit of my sports when I was playing this sport or that sport. I'm just not being, I don't want to be like quoting any client verbatim. So, and then but he used to really push me to do this sport. And I really wanted to do that sport. And it kind of, maybe people start to realize, but might not use these words. He expected everything from me. It was like I had to be perfect, because a lot of people do have perfection running in them because of some injury from a parent that doesn't have to be like huge trauma or abuse. And then a person might say, so yeah, my dad was like that, but he worked and he put a roof over our heads and he clothed us and he fed us. So I still talk to him, it's whatever. And that right there is this tacit denial filled with cognitive dissonance about a parent because, well, he was a good guy. He was around. But he wasn't emotionally available for me. Well, how much woundedness is in the lack of emotional availability, no matter what else you could say about a parent? And this is the way that people with codependency get breadcrumbed in childhood, often, deny it, trying to obfuscate it, trying to people please the parent to get some feeling of connection. When people say, I could say the same thing, only I wouldn't use the word dad, but my father was totally off the map. Forget it. Abusive, crazy. And, was there a time in my life when I was way younger and going through my own recovery that I thought, well, yeah, my childhood was fine, even though mine was worse than the average person with codependency, because I had a little bit more than that to work on, as I've talked about before. There was a time when I was in therapy. I was probably 18, 19, something like that, talking to some social worker at that point in time. And they asked me, how was your childhood? And I, or some part of me, said, fine, great. It was great. It was happy. It was fine. Because my childhood, just like I have clients that say that to me all the time too. And I'm out here to work with you if you resonate with me. I was so out of touch with myself. So much denial. I don't know what part of me said that. You know what I mean? It was an inner child part. It wasn't real. I didn't even have a feeling in that moment of dissociation or that I was lying. I really think I sort of was in so much denial that I said that. And when I think back to that, and I've had lots of clients grappling with this and saying similar things to me, right, over the years. But when I think back to that moment, it's like my childhood was anything but fine. And somewhere, I mean, I knew that in many different ways. But even when it's obvious our childhood hasn't been fine, sitting across from a social worker or a therapist, whatever, and they ask you that question, you go, fine, great. My parents are really good, which I hear from a lot of clients until we start really discussing it, going deeper as they're ready and as I ask questions. And I think in that moment, that's truly what I wanted to have be real, what I wanted to believe, because I was denying everything. Because it might sound like a extreme statement, but other than material things like food, clothes, housing, my journey as a child with my parents, both cluster Bs and alcoholics, was never okay and not fine at all. But I searched through my mind so many times over years ago, just trying to find a good memory. I really couldn't find one. I had to try to let one or two things that weren't that good be a little bit good, if you know what I mean. So when people are assessing from consciousness now without feeling what you felt as a child, my childhood was great. My parents were fine. Well, if that was the case, you wouldn't have this codependency issue. Is there codependency in culture also? Yeah. But you wouldn't have codependency to the degree, in the way, from the woundedness in childhood that leads people to be with cluster Bs, because there's just a definite connection. Does that happen to every single person? I can't say that. This commenter expressing so much pain, so much awareness, right, from here, intellect. How am I letting this go on? Why am I still and they just keep yelling at me, screaming at me, insulting me. Don't appreciate anything I give them, or maybe for an hour, the commenter said, and I'd say, maybe the commenter would still do it, or people that can relate to that might still do it, even if it was only like 30 seconds to a minute or 2 or 5 minutes of quote appreciation, unquote, until they don't care anymore. You learned, commenter, and anybody that can relate to this, you learned this in childhood. And you might think it just started in the relationship, because a lot of things about people's childhoods aren't in their conscious awareness right now. They can be brought to conscious awareness in recovery and healing processes, and I'm out here to work with you if I resonate with you. And people can think of some things too sometimes, just by themselves, only a lot of people don't do that. Why? Because you're blocking it. And because one of the biggest things about codependency, aspects, traits, whatever you want to call it, is denial. Deny to protect self from the hurt of what's really true. That happened in childhood to some degree or other. And that's what happens when you're with a person with BPD and you're abandoning yourself, because that's how you got trained in childhood, inculcated, program. So you learn to abandon yourself for somebody else's needs in childhood to one degree or another. The commenter likely did. And then you're doing that now, and a part of your brain is screaming at you, what am I doing this for? No person who's sane would put up with all this horrible treatment and really not being loved and giving more. Well, and it sounds like the person is judging themselves, hard on themselves, and then says, I obviously need help because no sane person would put up with the abuse I put up with. What is that if not cognitive dissonance? Which is really formidable and painful and part of codependent denial. The dissonance, the tension, the rub, the opposites that are trying to be melded together is somewhere deep down inside this commenter, there's an emotional, psychological reason for why they have this repetition compulsion. But they don't know what it is. And they know. And by the way, you're not alone. Lots of people put up with this comment, or anybody else that can relate. But he's railing against what he's doing. And he says, I know I need help because, but I wonder if they've reached out to get help yet. And are you in this kind of situation where, you hate to say it, but your ex is really effed up and starting fights, yelling, insulting you, never really appreciated anything you did or not for long, just like ungrateful, ingrate kind of thing, because they don't trust and believe in what you're trying to share with them at all. They have nowhere to put it. Lost self. Unstable sense of identity is mild words for the fact that there is no self, no container of self in people with BPD. If you can relate to this, or maybe it's not ongoing right now, but for this person, they at this point in time said they were still doing thoughtful things for this person and putting up with all that horrible treatment. Cognitive dissonance within still some form of impossible toxic relationship still going on. Have you ever thought about the cognitive dissonance not only after the fact or when it's your ex, but when you're actively still involved in wanting them back, invested in wanting them back, getting them back maybe sometimes and going around and they go away again, but you're going to do whatever it takes to get them back again. And again, like I've been saying in some videos, as I'm recording them all at once, so the theme is in my head. Doing the same thing over again with a person that always hurts you, and then some, and expecting something to be different just because, we're back together now. Or, that rupture from 20 minutes ago, they don't seem to be in the same place anymore. So should I sit here and feel angry and upset and hurt still? Or should I try to take advantage of they seem to be in a good mood now? Self-abandonment, what's repeating itself here. Everything is not about the borderline. The cognitive dissonance that you experienced, just like the no closure that you experience all through the relationship with a person with BPD. Why does it feel so impossible to deal with? And why does rumination build so much? Because you were accruing all kinds of cognitive dissonance and losing yourself to it and abandoning yourself. And you were accruing all kinds of no closure and lack of understanding and never having any ruptured episode of triggered dysregulated emotion from the borderline and or devaluation of you, never fixing one of them. So when it's all of a sudden all over, or you're pretty sure it is, or in your head, like lots of clients will say, like they're in this place, but they go, but I know I can't go back. But there's still a lot of emotional things to work on. Wherever you are in this process, I'm out here to work with you if you resonate with me, but you need to get into the action of seeking therapy and help to heal, because when there's so much denial, cognitive dissonance, lack of closure, loss of self, more loss of self for people with codependency through these relationships, and you don't recognize who you are half the time. People don't recognize who they are anymore at the end. People have ditched friends, dumped their life, put it all into the borderline. Not everybody, but some people. And then it's like, now what do I do? They're alone, and many people with codependency can't handle being alone, or just that feeling of, maybe not just because you're alone, but what happens emotionally with being alone. More loneliness, more feeling like a failure, more self-judgment. Because maybe it was the way I read it. Maybe I applied a different tone to the first comment than the commenter really was feeling at the time. But to me, that's what I would associate with what the commenter said in terms of how much agony and pain is in that comment, because working with so many clients that are in the same area, I kind of can just imagine, and because I've been through it myself too. I had a cluster B relationship with somebody with BPD, and that really didn't end well because she took her life. And then also the BPD, NPD alcoholic that I've talked about. It was the second last of that type of relationship, but I had healthy relationships in between. So, it's like, see, that's what you don't want to be doing. But it happened to me. It happens to lots of people. You know better, but something brings you back because you have unfinished work. That's been my experience. Like when I was with the BPD, NPD alcoholic, it was because in what happened and transpired in that relationship, I caught on to what was going on that wasn't fully dealt enough in a part of my inner child because, something popped back up and I'm like, ugh. And when you recognize that and you can unearth that, which I help clients to do, then what that means is now you've got your reason for how'd you bite the hook. And you need to know that to be able to take the hook out of your mouth, that it doesn't cut you some more on the way out, so you can learn and process emotion and heal more. And when I did that with that person, I really thought, oh, now I've got it, right? We don't want to talk about that because I don't think we can ever say never, but I think I'm as close to never as could possibly be because I am in a relationship. And because even if I wasn't in a relationship, I just don't think I would settle for one freaking red flag that made me feel uncomfortable. The cognitive dissonance and the lack of closure accrues all through the relationship. And so that also has an incredible impact on why rumination can be so hard to break. And why are you thinking about all this? And why is it ruminating constantly, whatever you're thinking about? You might be thinking about the good times. You might just be thinking about, why didn't this work? How can I go back and make it work? What can I do? I got to fix them. I got to change them. And that often is happening for people with codependency who don't realize that. I mean, obviously, intellectually, but you don't realize it. Many people don't realize it at points that you can't change anybody but yourself. Like, we all know that intellectually, right? But where does it go in the trauma bonds and the dynamics and the like? Where does what we know about that go? Well, it just dissipates to, that, never mind. I feel this way and I need this person. I want this person. I'm never going to get a person like this person seemingly was, or I'm never going to get a partner that's going to be so great at the physical relations again like this. I won't get a woman. This was the most gorgeous woman I was ever with. These are things clients tell me. He was the greatest looking dude I'd ever been with. Whatever the case. See, what are you doing after these relationships? And can you relate to this? You have codependency and maybe you're not even finished with the borderline and maybe you're still trying to pay for the therapy and still trying to rescue them. All that means you want them back, by the way. So if you think that you're like working your way out, you might be. There's paradoxes here. Everything's not black and white. But if you think you're working your way out, you might be, but you still got to put in when you want to pay for the therapy, when you want to do this, when you're re-engaging, when you're saying, well, if you could just change this and stop doing that and like hear me, and that's like telling a person, like the other video I did recently, telling a person BPD they're worth it, so then they don't need to go to therapy and everything magically changes about the relationship. Codependent denial. And people with codependency that I work with, until they work through some of the process, just see if you relate to this. I'm not going to say, this is you for sure, because I don't know who you are out there, right? I can't quite see you either. It's weird, this thing. People with codependency are often not that aware, with everything that's inundated you and how much you heard, that you're still trying to change the borderline. Even though you're starting, like clients I'm working with, like, I know it's over and I know I can't go back, but, and how many clients have I had say, oh, high percentage of clients over time, I know I need to get out of this, but, or if they're that are not really in active contact with the borderline, and they'll say, I know I need out of this, I can't go back. And we've done a lot of work and they're really getting better in the process, healing. When a client's made so much process and then they'll say, but if he or she called me tomorrow, I really don't know if I could ignore that. A lot of people say this when they block the borderline, everything, they can't call them. But this is the emotional processing. It takes time. And I've had some clients say that, and it's like really still a possibility and very likely because they're working so hard to get out of it and break that unhealthy bond. At the same time saying, but I don't know if I could resist a hoover. And that's one reason why it's really important to go no contact, because many people in the beginning of moving away from the relationship, you're very hard to resist a hoover. Very hard not to, if you're watching their social media, start reverse hoovering them. And then think about, what do you think of the cognitive dissonance and the lack of closure, and how that just increases over time, so that the aggregate effect, if you're now out of the relationship and not having contact with the borderline, what's driving the rumination is two things. That you went, for all the time you were relating to this person, married, whatever the relationship, however many years or short period of time you were with them, the cognitive dissonance that you were experiencing that was hurting you, the lack of closure, the confusion, how you lose yourself, there's that. And then rumination is also driven by, unconsciously usually, or maybe even consciously, oh, I have all these feelings, I don't want to feel what I feel, and a self-abandonment again. And then you're like, so nobody says this, but this is what happens. So then a lot of people who are acts of a BPD are going to sit there and ruminate about the good times. Because if you don't do that, and it's not like you're always consciously, but there is a choice in there somewhere. People need to work down levels of what's on the unconscious to bring to consciousness to really be able to make change with these things, a step at a time. Because what's happening is, a lot of people don't consciously realize that the rumination, there are choice points. I'm not saying it's conscious right now for people though, but you blow through all your choice points and you continue to ruminate, usually on the good, because you're trying to escape your own pain, and it's hard to face yourself. And people with codependency have never really learned or been taught a healthy way of actually taking care of you and taking care of yourself, so that you're not going to have to focus on this, that, the other, or the borderline all the time, and what was. And the other thing that I found that people with codependency, after these relationships do, or while they're on and off, or whatever iteration, people with codependency are very rarely living in the here and now moment. So people with codependency are living in the past with the borderline, the past with the cognitive dissonance, the past with the lack of closure, the past with, are we done, aren't we done, can I get her back, can I get him back, should I go back, what am I going to do, I can't live with them, I can't live without them, that kind of feeling and process. And so when all that's happening, that thrusts and makes worse, and exponentially you spend more time in ruminating about the good, either to escape your pain now and what is right now, well, primarily that, and or if somebody just isn't kind of finished yet, because these repetition compulsions are unconsciously driving you to keep going around the circle. With the borderline, who's going around the circle with you until they're not, or whoever pulls out first. But for all that's in their unconscious, brokenness and fragmentation, and they don't understand consciously why either. And it's not the same, but they're codependent as well. So there's some similarities, but then BPD is obviously much deeper issues and brokenness in people, and they don't know who they are entirely. And people with codependency, it's not that you lost yourself entirely. Rumination can be a whole lot more than what people think it is, because they think it's like addictive. They think they can't stop it. But yet you really got to understand, bring up to your conscious awareness what's going on unconsciously that keeps driving that. Because it can be many different things. And I'm just saying, cognitive dissonance all through the relationship, lack of closure all through the relationship. So if you've experienced the relationship 8, 10 years, 5 years, 3 years with somebody with BPD or even longer, how much have you been impacted by the aggregate effect of all that cognitive dissonance? Not just at the end, but all of it, and all of the lack of closure, and all of those crazy making times when it all fell apart for you and you weren't seen or heard. And that is usually an entirely repetition compulsion experience, not consciously experienced by people with codependency at the time, but it goes back to childhood. And my other point was, people with codependency are either in the past with the borderline, anytime ruminating, cognitive dissonance, talking about them, not in therapy, obviously got to talk about them, but thinking about them, trying to contact them, that focus, external focus, Your locus of focus is out there with them because you're not being there for yourself. And that's all your past. It might seem like it's still in the present, but it's pretty much all your past, whether you know it or not yet, for people that are really going to move on from this. So people with codependency are either in the past, it might be like yesterday past, but it's in the past still. And then what happens when a codependent is on their own for a while and they've been ruminating and they're trying to stop that? And well, what do clients say to me a lot? Well, then they show how people with codependency have this proclivity and really it's second nature, and it's being done unconsciously as well. You project yourself into the future. So people with codependency aren't really in the here and now. It's like borderline focus, rumination, etc. is past. Even if you get back with them and it doesn't work again, it's going to be past. It's past in that moment. So instead of sitting with the moment, people with codependency are back in that past, recent, yesterday, 5 minutes ago, or years ago, or else they are often projecting into the future. Statements like, beliefs like, cognitively distorted beliefs like, I'll never get a woman who looks as good as she did, or a man who looks as good as he did, or I'll never have any really meaningful or as near exciting physical relations again as I had with the borderline. Or the nagging part of the projection into the future. The projection in the future is always negative for people with codependency because you're feeling really bad and you're lost and you're hurting. And so it's like, I'm never going to find somebody again. Nobody's going to love me like she loved me or he loved me. They didn't love you. What are you saying? But this is what a lot of people that I've worked with over the years have said, and it's understandable. Projecting yourself into the future. People with codependency have this second nature, unfortunately, because you've been programmed this way, and you need to break that programming. That's part of recovery, too. You without realizing it. So are there choices there to learn about? Yes. But are you aware that you're making choices? No. Not consciously. Put yourself in this being in the past, projecting the future into the future, not being in the here and now at all, puts you in just constant conflict of no matter what happens, nothing's going to work for me and I'm never going to get what I want or what I need. Or for younger people, I want to have a family. I want to be a dad. I want to be a mom. And whatever it is, it's hard and really painful. And it contributes to what the suffering is after these breakups or you've been ghosted, discarded. And it's really important for people with codependency to consider, what does it mean for you? And people who have been in these relationships, right? What does it mean for you that what I just said, can you relate to it? Have you ever thought about it? Have you had awareness of it or not? Are you thinking about it now? Because you're either in past or future. And both are like negative. One didn't work out, but you're still trying to hold on to some good, positive. And then because you feel like you don't have anything in the here and now, where are you with you in the here and now? And then the projection into the future is going to come back and bang into your past. So it's going to be, I'm never going to find anyone like this person. Nobody's going to love me ever again. I'm going to be alone for the rest of my life. All of that projection in the future, in moments and seconds, comes crashing back into the past. And the circle is, and therefore I really need to get the ex back because there's nothing out there for me. No, I need this person. This is the one I was supposed to be with. And by the way, the borderline or the narcissist is not your twin flame, or not your imago match, or not your soulmate. And love isn't something. Healthy love is not something that one has to fight for, or fight through, or feel like it's going to slip through your fingers every 10 minutes because the person is doing this, that, and the other thing. It's really important to start realizing these things because they're all blocks for many people to even start therapy to heal from this. And the other thing about loss and these breakups and how you still love them, but you're in love with their potential and you never really knew them and all of this crazy making very painful stuff is that you have to start sifting through it, accepting it, understanding how did you get there? Where did it come from? Your woundedness in childhood, your experience in childhood, where did it come from? What is replaying in your unconscious? Because when you get that awareness, you do the work and you do the grief and emotional work, healing work, then you're going to be able to let it go. But until you know what it is, you can't really grieve it. You might be feeling grief as well, but you're not really actively engaging your own grief. So codependency and these breakups, yes, what the person with BPD or NPD does and everything, it's a nightmare. And the relationships are impossible, and many of you aren't ready to accept that yet even. And many people have, but yet they haven't worked it through. So again, out here to work with you if I resonate with you. And please know that you're worth taking the action. At first, it's like a blind step of faith. I'm going to, in the case of if I resonate with you or whoever you would want to work with, I'm going to go book a session. I'm going to start taking action. I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know how it's supposed to be done. What is, if you're going to work with me, what am I going to do for you? How does it work? People start there all the time. But what you need to do is get into the action of working with someone and slowing down all those questions so that you can actually work on them to find the answers to them. Rilke said, what I advocate for people and when I'm working with them is, what is that process of healing recovery? Well, like the Rilke quote, which I don't remember all of it or whatever, but live your way to the answers to the questions of your life. And part of living your way to that after BPD, NPD, comorbid, whatever, breakup, or goes discard, but like you gotta stop it. You really want to break the fantasy unhealthy bond, whatever. You need to break it, and it's not going to get broken just because maybe you're willing yourself not to call them right now, or they won't call you back. You need to get into action because you need to change. You need to heal what you've been through with the person with BPD or NPD or comorbidity both. You need to heal how you got there. Find out how you got there and heal things from childhood. And to some degree or other, there's that component with everybody. And then you need to be able to start to see what it might mean. Have your inner child or inner child aspects integrated within you and what it means to be an individuated, independent individual. And until you know what that is through a healing and recovery process, you're not going to be able to find the healthy love that you really want. Because some people say, well, I don't know if I want that kind of love, because a lot of men have said to me, I find healthy women boring. Well, healthier women don't have the intensity of these cluster Bs, but they have a whole other world to show you and a whole lot more to offer you. Or healthy men, as opposed, like for women who are with men with BPD, you need to live your way to the answers to all the questions that are flooding your head right now. Why can't it work? How come they're not who I thought they were? They got this potential. All these things become, whether put in question form or not, questions that you need to take action to work with somebody to be living your way and working your way in therapy and a process toward answering them. Because the other thing that Rilke said with that quote was, because if we got the answers to all our questions at once, we wouldn't be able to cope with it. And that's not how humans work, and it's not how we create change. And I think that's one thing that a lot of clients have called me over almost 35 years now, thousands and thousands of people, is I'm kind of like that touchstone, stepping stone for clients of helping them through things, maybe helping them with certain things and bringing more to awareness and examining it and healing the emotional pain inside and etc. from the relationship and from things in childhood. So a lot of people said I'm kind of like a change agent, if you will, but it is all about change. It's all about growth. It's all about processing and healing what's really hurt you. And with the pain of that process, which it becomes more a reward once you start to get used to it, because I've had many clients, and this is the way I went through it in my life, decades ago. And this is what I found too, is that once you get adept and you learn how to cope with the pain and the grief and the loss and all that you need to process to live your way to the answers to the questions that are all around you right now and maybe still unconscious largely, it's knowing that the only way out of this pain is through it. You can't avoid it. You can't go over it. Can't go under it. Can't go around it. Can't just skip it. You can skip it. You can deny it, but you're going to get hurt for the rest of your life if you do that. What I'm trying to get to here is, in the process of healing, it's about making friends with that pain, leaning in to the adversity that you've been avoiding all your life, probably not on purpose, not even consciously. But the inner child healing work is especially about this. It's hearing that little you at whatever age or ages and stages of your childhood, the pain that got repressed because there's no other way for kids to cope with it. But obviously the adaptation of codependency and trying to please a parent more for whatever the reason. And that's not always exactly how it goes for people. To create real lasting change that is healing and recovery, we need to embrace the adversity. And in my experience, when I was in recovery and healing and in therapy working on things decades ago, was the more that I accepted the pain, the more that I radically accepted the pain, that I was willing to reach in there. I had to do other work first, into my wounded inner child, different age stages, parts. Till we do that, we don't know how to do it. And as you learn how to do it, and as I teach people how to do it, and then you're grieving, and then you're feeling the pain, and then you get to the point like I did in my recovery where I was like, bring it on. I want more. Bring it. Like if I could get triggered more, if I could feel more pain, I wanted to. Because you learn at a certain point in this process that as you really embrace the pain and you cry and there's other things you can do, but you're working through it, and the grief and the loss and the confusion on multiple levels for most people, then you're learning, but when I cry for like 10 minutes really hard, I cry really deep for half an hour, oh, that's hard. It's painful. It's challenging. But only by doing it can you learn that then you feel way better after for a while. There's a reward there. And so then people get more motivated, and I try to help clients to remember this and be mindful of this all the time. Each time you feel something, and you're real with it, and you sit with it, you journal about it, or you cry about it, or a myriad of other things, you express anger in healthy ways about it, etc., then piece by piece, you're getting out of you. You're healing it. And it's a process. So nobody can just change because people think, well, I don't have to do this anymore. I can make a different choice. But people aren't aware what's going on unconsciously that's going to block you every time you try that. So I hope this made some sense. It's kind of long, but hey, like I said, I don't script these things, and I have an associative mind, and so then, this is what happens. But I hope it was helpful in some way or other, or it just gives you food for thought, because it depends where you're at right now, to what degree you listen to this, or if you're still here at all or not. Because to the person, not going to be one person, but it's not going to be everybody, but to the people who come to the end of these longer things I do, you might not realize how dedicated you are. Have you taken that next action step yet to work with somebody? Or if you resonate with me, I got a space for you. We can start that process. I can help you to break that terrible fantasy betrayal bond and more. Take care.